For 2 years, I was invisible. I managed Dante Moretti's schedule, his business, and the secrets that could get us both killed. I loved him from the shadows, convinced that a woman like me could never truly be with a dangerous man like him. But tonight, I'm done being invisible. Tonight, I'm wearing a red dress, I'm on the arm of another man, and I'm about to teach the most powerful crime lord in the city a lesson he'll never forget. He doesn't know what he has until he sees someone else holding it. Before we dive into the chaos, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It really supports the channel and lets me know you want more. The rain had turned Manhattan into a watercolor painting, all bleeding lights and gray shadows. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Moretti Industries' 47th floor office, watching the city blur beneath me, and wondered, not for the first time, if this was what purgatory felt like. Beautiful, untouchable, endless. Ms. Chen. His voice cut through my thoughts like a blade through silk. I didn't turn around. 26 months working for Dante Moretti had taught me that immediate obedience was expected, but composure was currency. The Salvatore file. Walk me through your concerns. I turned, keeping my expression professionally neutral, and found him behind his desk. A massive thing of black walnut and brass that looked more like a throne than furniture. Everything about Dante Moretti's office was designed to remind you of his power. The art on the walls cost more than most people's houses. The view commanded the city like a general surveying his troops. And the man himself. He sat, perfectly still, dark suit tailored so precisely it might have been painted on. His black hair swept back to reveal a face that belonged on Roman coins, all sharp angles and aristocratic brutality. His eyes, nearly black in the dim office light, tracked me with the focus of a predator. Not that he saw me, not really. To Dante Moretti, I was a function, a highly efficient, rarely malfunctioning piece of his empire. I kept his schedule, managed his legitimate business interests, and asked no questions about the parts of his world that existed in shadows. The Salvatore shipping contracts. Their routes have shifted 3 times in the last quarter, always in ways that technically comply with regulations, but create gaps in accountability. You think they're smuggling. I think they're creating plausible deniability. I met his gaze steadily. Which means either they're smuggling or they're setting you up to look like you are. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. Or surprise that I'd followed the logic that far. With Dante, it was impossible to tell. The man had perfected emotional blankness the way other people perfected golf swings. Recommended action? Sever the partnership. Do it publicly with full documentation of the irregularities. Turn it into a display of your commitment to legitimate business practices. That'll cost us $4 million a quarter. Cheaper than a RICO investigation. This time, I definitely saw approval. His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like an acknowledgement that I'd said something worth hearing. Draft the termination. Have it on my desk by end of day. Already done. Sent it to your secure email 20 minutes ago. He leaned back in his chair, and for 3 full seconds, he simply looked at me. Not through me, not past me, at me. Like I'd suddenly come into focus in a way I hadn't been before. My pulse jumped traitorously. You anticipated this conversation. You always want problems eliminated before they become crises. The Salvatore situation qualified. I kept my voice steady despite the way his attention made my skin feel too tight. Shall I schedule a meeting with the legal team? Already done, I assume? Tomorrow, 9 a.m., conference room 3. The almost smile returned. What would I do without you, Ms. Chen? See me as something other than a tool. Look at me like I'm a woman instead of a particularly efficient machine. But what I said was, hire someone less competent and complain about it constantly. He did smile then, quick and genuine, and gone so fast I might have imagined it. I left before he could see the flush creeping up my neck. You need to relax, Marco said, sprawled across her sofa like he owned it. It's a fake date, not a marriage proposal. A fake date to my boss's charity gala, I corrected, pulling another dress from my closet and immediately rejecting it. Too formal, too casual, I'm trying too hard to impress a man who knows I don't exist. Marco, my best friend since college and the only person I'd trusted enough to involve in this scheme, just grinned. The same boss you've been in love with for 2 years? I'm not... I stopped, sighed, threw a dress at his face. Fine, yes. Happy? Ecstatic. It's like watching a romance novel in real life, except the heroine has been too much of a coward to actually tell the hero she loves him. He's not a hero, Marco. He's a... I stopped myself. Even in my own apartment, some truths were too dangerous to speak out loud. He's my employer. There's a power dynamic. It would be inappropriate. Uh-huh. And that's the only reason? I met his eyes in the mirror. Marco knew me too well. He'd been there through every late night, every moment when I came home exhausted and frustrated and secretly thrilled by the challenge of keeping up with Dante Moretti's impossible standards. He'd watched me fall in love in slow motion, one perfectly executed task at a time. He doesn't see me that way, I said quietly. To him, I'm just efficient. Then maybe it's time he saw you differently. Marco stood, moving to stand behind me. This gala, show up with me on your arm. Let him see you as a woman someone else wants. Maybe that'll wake him up. Or it'll just be awkward and achieve nothing. Bella, he used the nickname only he was allowed. When have you ever backed down from a challenge? I looked at my reflection. Average height, average features, average everything. Except the ability to anticipate Dante Moretti's needs before he voiced them. That was my superpower. That was all I had. Maybe Marco was right. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Fine, I said, but you're buying dinner after this disaster. Deal, he grinned. Now pick the red dress. If you were going to give your Mafia boss a heart attack, you might as well commit. I picked up the red dress, silk, fitted, elegant but understated, and tried not to think about what Dante's face would look like when he saw me. Tried not to hope that maybe, finally, he'd really see me.
What do you think Dante will do when he sees Isabel with another man? Will he finally admit how he feels, or will his pride destroy everything? Drop your predictions in the comments below. I love reading your theories.
The Grand Meridian Ballroom was exactly what I'd expected. Excessive, glittering, and filled with people who measured their worth in zeros. I'd arrived early, of course, 3 hours before the event started, to handle last-minute crises. The florist had brought white roses instead of cream. The orchestra's sheet music had been delivered to the wrong entrance. The mayor's assistant had called 4 times about dietary restrictions. Standard chaos. I'd handled it all with my usual efficiency, then slipped away to change in the private room I'd reserved for exactly this purpose. Now, standing in the lobby in my red dress, with Marco's hand warm against my lower back, I felt like an imposter, like someone playing dress up in a world that wasn't mine. "You look beautiful," Marco murmured. "Stop doubting yourself." I managed to smile, but my heart was hammering. Somewhere in that ballroom, Dante was already holding court, probably surrounded by power brokers and politicians and women who actually belonged in his world. Women who were beautiful and sophisticated and everything I wasn't. "Ready?" Marco asked. I nodded, though I absolutely wasn't. We entered the ballroom together. The space was transformed, all golden light and elegant simplicity, exactly as I'd planned it. The orchestra played softly, champagne flowed, New York's elite mingled in expensive fabrics and false smiles. And there, near the center of it all, stood Dante Moretti. He wore a tuxedo like it was armor, black and perfectly fitted, making him look even more untouchable than usual. His dark hair was swept back, his expression cool and assessing as he spoke with someone I vaguely recognized as a state senator. He hadn't seen me yet. "Come on," Marco said. "Let's get champagne." We moved through the crowd. I greeted familiar faces, donors I'd spoken with on the phone, business associates I'd scheduled meetings for. Everyone was polite, friendly even, because I was Dante Moretti's assistant, and that meant something in this world. But nobody really saw me, just like always. Until Isabel? I turned toward the voice and found Roberto Castellano, one of Dante's business rivals, smiling at me with obvious surprise. "Mr. Castellano," I said professionally, "I didn't realize you were attending. Last-minute addition to the guest list." His gaze slid to Marco with open curiosity. "I didn't realize you'd be here as a guest. I'm coordinating the event," I explained. "But I also—" "She's with me," Marco cut in smoothly, extending his hand. "Marco Vitale, pleasure to meet you." Something changed in Castellano's expression, amusement mixed with calculation. "How interesting. Does Dante know his right hand has a personal life?" Before I could respond, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. I felt him before I saw him, that shift in atmospheric pressure that always accompanied Dante's attention. My skin prickled, my breath caught. I turned. Dante stood 10 feet away, frozen mid-conversation. His companion was still talking, but Dante wasn't listening. He was staring at me, at Marco's hand on my waist, at our proximity, at the visual evidence that I existed outside the walls of his office. His expression hadn't changed. That was what made it terrifying. Dante Moretti in a rage was dangerous, but Dante Moretti going absolutely still, his face blank while something violent churned behind his eyes, that was deadly. Our gazes locked across the ballroom. 3 seconds, 5, 10. I couldn't breathe. Then he moved. Not toward the exit, not toward his business associates, toward us. Each step was measured, controlled, terrifying in its precision. The crowd seemed to sense something and parted without conscious thought, creating a path like he was Moses and they were the Red Sea. Marco's hand tightened on my waist. "Is that?" "Yes." "He looks like he wants to murder me." "Probably." Dante stopped directly in front of us. This close, I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists before he deliberately relaxed them. His eyes, nearly black in the dim lighting, fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Miss Chen?" His voice was soft, deadly soft. "A word?" "Mr. Moretti, I'm—" "Now." It wasn't a request.
Marco's hand dropped from my waist like he'd been burned. "I'll be right back," I told Marco, though my voice came out shakier than intended. Dante turned and walked toward the private balcony that overlooked the city. I followed, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the orchestra. The balcony was empty and blessedly cold, the October air cutting through my dress immediately. Dante stood at the railing, his back to me, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Mr. Moretti," I started, "if this is about the event logistics, who is he?" The question was quiet, but it hit like a physical blow. I don't. Who is he? Each word was precisely enunciated, like he was testing them for poison. "A friend. You brought a friend." He turned to face me then, and the expression on his face stole my breath. Not anger, something rawer, more dangerous. "To my event? It's a charity gala, Mr. Moretti. I'm allowed to attend with—" "You're allowed to do whatever you want, Miss Chen." He moved closer, and I instinctively backed up until my spine hit the railing. "But don't insult my intelligence by calling him a friend. What else would you call him?" "A distraction." He was close now, so close I could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark that made me dizzy, something you're using to prove a point. What point would that be? His gaze dropped to my mouth, lingered, rose back to my eyes with something burning in their depths. "That you're not mine." The words hung between us, impossible and raw, and everything I'd wanted to hear for 2 years. "I was never yours," I whispered. His jaw tightened. "No, you were never mine. You were always just efficient, essential." The word landed like a confession. We stood there, inches apart, the city spreading out behind us and the sound of the party filtering through closed doors. His hand came up, hovering, near my face but not quite touching, like he was afraid of what would happen if he did. "Go back inside, Miss Chen," he said finally, his voice rough. "Before I do something we'll both regret." I go. But as I walked away, I heard him say, so quietly I almost missed it, "Before I do something we'll both regret."
The rest of the gala passed in a blur of champagne and forced smiles, while I felt Dante's gaze burning into me from across the room. He didn't approach again, didn't speak to me, but he was there, a constant presence at the edge of my awareness, watching Marco and me with an intensity that made every casual touch feel weaponized. Marco, to his credit, played his part perfectly. He laughed at my jokes, kept his hand on my lower back, and generally acted like a man who had every right to be by my side. But I could feel his tension too, the way he tracked Dante's movements with the wariness of prey aware of a predator. "Your boss is terrifying," he murmured during a slow dance, "and also possibly about to start a war over you. Don't be dramatic. Bella, he's been staring at us for 45 minutes straight. If looks could kill, I'd be a corpse." I risked a glance across the ballroom and immediately regretted it. Dante stood near the bar, a glass of whiskey in hand, his expression carved from ice as he watched us. Our eyes met. He didn't look away. Neither did I. "Earth to Isabel," Marco said, spinning me so my back was to Dante. "You need to breathe." I realized I'd been holding my breath. "Sorry, You need to tell him the truth." "What truth?" "That this," he gestured between us, "is fake. That you're in love with him. That you've been slowly dying inside for 2 years watching him not see you." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because Dante Moretti didn't do relationships. He did power and control and occasionally women who understood that both were temporary. Because I'd built my entire professional life on being indispensable And loving him meant risking everything. Because sometimes the fantasy was safer than the reality. I can't. Why not? Because Dante Moretti didn't do relationships. He did power and control, and occasionally women who understood that both were temporary. Because I'd built my entire professional life on being indispensable, and loving him meant risking everything. Because sometimes the fantasy was safer than the reality. It doesn't matter what I feel, I said quietly. He's made it clear what I am to him. Efficient, essential, a function. The man on that balcony didn't look at you like you were a function, Bella. Before I could respond, the music ended. The crowd applauded politely, and Dante moved toward the stage to give his annual speech. I watched him take the microphone, watched him transform into the public version of himself. Charming, controlled, the perfect facade of a legitimate businessman who definitely didn't have ties to organized crime. Thank you all for coming, his voice carried across the ballroom, smooth as silk. Tonight, we've raised over $3 million for children's literacy programs across New York. I'd written this speech. I edited it 4 times, removed 3 sections that were too personal, and added statistics that made his charitable work seem more impressive. I knew every word he was about to say. But then he paused, his gaze finding mine across the crowd, and went off script. There's someone here tonight who reminds me that behind every successful man is someone keeping the chaos at bay. Someone who sees the problems before they exist and fixes them before anyone notices they were ever there. My breath caught. Someone who deserves more credit than she ever receives. Was he talking about me? So I'd like to take this moment to thank my assistant, Isabel Chen, for her tireless work on tonight's event and her invaluable contributions to everything I do. The crowd applauded, faces turned toward me. I felt heat creeping up my neck as I forced a professional smile. Marco leaned close. He just publicly acknowledged you exist. That's huge. But I barely heard him. Because Dante was still looking at me, his expression unreadable, and something in my chest was cracking open in ways I couldn't afford. When the music ended, I made a decision. I need to go, I told Marco. What? But thank you for doing this, for being here, but I need to leave before I do something stupid. Understanding flickered in his eyes. Go. I'll handle things here. I slipped through the crowd toward the exit, my heart pounding. I just needed air, space, distance from Dante Moretti and his confusing signals and the way he'd looked at me like I mattered. I made it to the lobby, to the elevator bank, my finger hovering over the button. Running away, Miss Chen? I'm not running. I'm leaving. Without saying goodbye to your date? He's not... I stopped myself. It's none of your business, Mr. Moretti. No, it's not. He moved closer, just close enough that I could see the storm in his dark eyes. Just like it's none of my business if you date someone, if you have a life outside my office, if you decide tomorrow that you're done being efficient and essential and want to be something entirely different. What are you saying? I'm saying... He stopped, jaw tightening. I'm saying I have no right to be angry, no right to follow you out here, no right to care who you came here with, or why you're wearing that dress, or why you've been avoiding looking at me all night. I haven't been avoiding. You have. And I don't blame you. I stood on that balcony and said things I had no right to say, acted like... He stopped himself again. Like what? Like you were mine to be jealous over. The admission hung between us, raw and dangerous. Mr. Moretti, don't. His voice was rough. Don't call me that right now. Don't be professional. Don't be efficient. Just tell me the truth. Is he your boyfriend? Would it matter if he was? Yes. The single word landed like a gunshot. I stared at him, my carefully constructed walls crumbling. Why? Because he moved closer, close enough that I could see the storm in his dark eyes. Because for 2 years, you've been the one constant in my life, the one person I trust without question, the one person who knows everything about me and stayed anyway. I'm your assistant. You're more than that. What am I then? He looked at me like I'd asked him to solve an impossible equation. I don't know. But whatever you are, you're not his. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and something shuddered in his expression. I have to take this. He stepped back, that professional mask sliding into place. We'll discuss this Monday. Dante, but he was already walking away, phone to his ear, the moment shattered. I stood alone in the empty lobby and realized I was shaking. Monday morning arrived, wrapped in gray November rain that turned Chicago's skyline into something from a noir film. I'd spent the entire weekend replaying that conversation with Dante, dissecting every word, every pause, every almost confession. You're not his. You're more than that. I don't know what you are. I'd also spent the weekend ignoring Marco's texts, asking if I was okay, and my own instinct to call in sick. But calling in sick would be admitting that something had changed, and I wasn't ready to admit anything yet. So I showed up at 6:30 a.m. like always, made Dante's coffee like always, reviewed his schedule like always, pretended my heart wasn't hammering every time I heard footsteps in the hallway. He arrived at 7:15, earlier than usual. I heard him enter his office, heard the heavy silence that meant he was settling in, reading through the briefing documents I'd left on his desk. The intercom stayed silent. By 9 a.m., I'd fielded 6 calls, rescheduled 2 meetings, and authorized payment on 3 invoices. Standard Monday chaos. But the intercom remained silent, and Dante's door stayed closed. By 11 a.m., I started wondering if he was avoiding me. By noon, I was certain of it. I was updating a contract when his door finally opened. I looked up, carefully composed, and found him standing in the doorway in shirt sleeves. Jacket discarded somewhere, tie loosened, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Miss Chin? His voice was carefully neutral. I need the Castellano files. All of them. They're on your secure drive, organized by I want the physical files. I blinked. We'd gone digital 3 months ago specifically to reduce physical storage. The only reason to want paper files was if he didn't trust the digital security, which meant something was wrong. Are we expecting a security breach? I asked carefully. I'm expecting complications. He rubbed his temple, a rare tell that meant stress he wasn't voicing. The physical files, Miss Chin. Please. They're in the storage facility in Cicero. I can have them here by end of day. I need them now. Then I'll need to go get them. Fine, I'll drive. I stared at him. You want to drive to Cicero? You? Is that a problem? Yes, it was a problem. Dante Moretti didn't do menial tasks. He had people for that. The fact that he was volunteering to spend 2 hours in a car with me suggested either the situation was more serious than I thought, or he wanted to talk. Neither option was comforting. No problem, I said carefully. I'll get my coat. 20 minutes later, I found myself in the passenger seat of Dante's Maserati, watching Chicago's industrial district blur past as rain hammered the windshield. He drove like he did everything else, precisely, efficiently, with complete control. We didn't speak. The silence stretched, heavy with everything unsaid from Saturday night. I kept my gaze fixed on the rain, on the gray landscape, on anything but the man beside me who'd admitted he didn't know what I was to him. Your friend, Marco. How long have you known him? Since college. And you trust him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Why? I turned to look at him. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel with more force than necessary. Because he's been there for me when no one else was. Because he's never asked for anything except my friendship. Because I stopped. Why does it matter? It doesn't. Then why are you asking? He was silent for 3 full seconds. Then I ran a background check on him. The admission hit like cold water. You what? Standard protocol. Anyone who gets close to my inner circle. I'm not your inner circle, Mr. Moretti. I'm your employee. Anger flared hot in my chest. You had no right. I had every right. You have access to sensitive information. If someone is using you to get to me, Marco isn't using me for anything except occasional dinner company and advice on his dating disasters. How do you know? Because I know him, I snapped. Because not everyone in this world is playing games or working angles or trying to manipulate their way into power. The car swerved slightly before Dante corrected. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. You think that's what I do? Manipulate? Play games? I think you control everything in your orbit, including me, and the moment something threatens that control, you panic. I don't panic. No, then what was Saturday night? He didn't answer, just kept driving, jaw clenched, something dangerous simmering beneath his perfect control. We reached the storage facility, a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Cicero that housed Moretti Enterprises' archived documents. I punched in my access code, and we entered the climate-controlled interior where rows of filing cabinets stretched into shadows. The Castellano files are in the back, I said, moving through the narrow aisles. Dante followed, his presence filling the small space in ways that made my skin prickle with awareness. I found the cabinet, pulled open the drawer, and froze. They're empty, I said slowly, my mind racing. All of them, every file in Castellano dating back 5 years. Dante moved beside me, his body taut with tension. When was the last time you were here? 3 months ago when we did the digital migration. They were all here then. I logged every transfer. Who else has access to this facility? Just you, me, and my stomach dropped. And Vincent from legal. He requested temporary access last month for an audit. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. His expression went cold. Vincent resigned Friday, left the country Saturday morning. We stared at each other in the dim warehouse, rain drumming on the metal roof above us, and I saw real fear flicker across his face for the first time since I'd known him. Someone's building a case against me, he said quietly. Using your own files. Castellano, I said, the pieces clicking together. He's been planning this. He knew about the digital migration, knew Vincent had access. He's been positioning himself to take over my territories for months. And now he has everything he needs to either blackmail me or hand me over to the FBI. I grabbed his arm without thinking. We'll fix this. We'll figure out what he has and neutralize it before he looked down at where my hand gripped his forearm. This isn't your problem, Isabel. The use of my first name sent electricity through me. If it threatens you, it's my problem, I said firmly. I'm not leaving you to handle this alone. You should. Anyone smart would walk away right now before I'm not walking away. We stood there in the shadows of the warehouse, my hand on his arm, his dark eyes searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give him. Why? He asked, voice rough. Why would you risk everything for me? Because I loved him. Because I'd loved him for 2 years while pretending I didn't. Because the thought of him facing this alone made my chest ache. But what I said was, because you pay well and I have student loans. His laugh was surprised and genuine. Liar. Prove it. I could. He caught my hand, pulling it away from his arm, but not releasing it. Could make you tell me the truth. How? He stepped closer, backing me against the filing cabinet, his free hand bracing beside my head. This close, I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the way his jaw tightened when he was fighting for control. Dante, I whispered. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Tell me this is inappropriate, that I'm your boss, that we can't. I know. But neither of us moved. The rain hammered overhead, the warehouse creaked, and Dante Moretti, the man who controlled everything, looked at me like I was the one thing he couldn't control at all. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He stepped back, releasing my hand, his expression shuddering as he answered, "What?" I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched his face go from guarded to absolutely cold. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm on the way. He hung up and looked at me, something like regret flickering across his features. We need to go. Now. What happened? Castellano just made his move.
We were back in the Maserati, speeding through Chicago's streets when Dante finally told me. Castellanos called a meeting. Tonight. All the families. My stomach dropped. I knew enough about Dante's world to understand what that meant. The families, the 5 major organized crime operations that controlled Chicago's underworld, only met when something seismic was happening. A shift in power, a declaration of war, a betrayal that threatened them all. He's accusing you of working with the FBI, Dante continued, his voice flat. Says he has proof, documents, recordings, enough to either get me killed by the families or arrested by the feds. The Castellano files. Exactly. He stole them, falsified evidence, and now he's using them to destroy me. His hands tightened on the wheel. If I can't disprove his claims tonight, I'm done. Either the families will execute me for betrayal or the FBI will arrest me, and Castellano will take everything I've built. I processed this, my mind racing. What do you need? I need proof that the documents are falsified. I need to find Vincent and get him to confess that Castellano put him up to it. And I need... He stopped. What? I need you safe, away from this. Absolutely not. Isabel. Don't. I cut him off. You're not sending me away to protect me. I know too much, I'm too involved, and frankly, you need me. This isn't a business meeting. These aren't corporate executives who will be swayed by PowerPoint presentations. These are dangerous men who've killed for less than what Castellano is accusing me of. Then it's a good thing I'm excellent under pressure. He glanced at me, something like admiration flickering across his face. You're terrifying, you know that? I learned from the best. We pulled up to Moretti Industries. Dante killed the engine, but didn't move to get out. There's something you should know, he said quietly, about why Castellano hates me, about why this is personal. I waited, giving him space to continue. 15 years ago, before I took over the family business, I was supposed to marry his sister, arranged marriage, meant to unite our territories, create peace. His jaw tightened. But I refused. I was 23 and stupid, and convinced I could build my empire without political alliances. What happened to her? She married someone else, a man from the Vittori family out east. She was happy, I think, but Castellano never forgave me for the insult, for rejecting his family, his sister, his attempt at alliance. So, this is revenge. This is him finally finding a way to destroy me while looking justified. If I die tonight, Isabel, if the families decide I'm guilty, I need you to promise me something. Don't! Promise me that you'll take the emergency account, the numbers are in the safe in my penthouse, and disappear. Change your name, leave Chicago, start over somewhere Castellano can't find you. I'm not! Promise me. His hand found mine, gripping tight. Why? Why does it matter what happens to me? Because
He stopped, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. You're the only good thing in my life, the only person who sees me as something other than a monster or a paycheck. Because for 2 years, you've been the reason I wanted to be better than my father, better than this world. Dante, I should have told you sooner. Should have admitted that Saturday night wasn't about jealousy. It was about watching you slip away from me before I'd ever really had you. I should have told you that every time you anticipated my needs, every time you fixed problems before I knew they existed, every time you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a monster, I fell a little more. Tears burned my eyes. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things, Isabel. Things you don't know about. Things that would make you look at me differently. Then tell me. Tell me everything and let me decide. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to talk. He told me about his father, a brutal man who'd ruled the Moretti family with violence and fear, about being 14 and watching his father kill a man in their living room for failing to pay protection money, about being forced to participate in business meetings that were actually executions, being groomed to inherit an empire built on blood. He told me about taking over at 21 when his father was murdered by a rival family, about the first time he'd killed someone, a man who tried to betray him to the Russians, about the slow, deliberate process of transforming the Moretti operations from pure crime into something that straddled the line. Legitimate businesses on the surface, darker dealings underneath. I've spent 15 years trying to clean up my father's legacy, trying to make the Moretti name mean something other than violence, but I've still done things, ordered things, that I can't take back. Like? He met my eyes. 2 years ago, a rival tried to kill me, failed, but killed 3 of my men in the process. I found everyone involved, 12 people, and had them eliminated. Not just killed, made examples of, so no one would try again. The rational part of my brain knew I should be horrified, should walk away from this man who just confessed to murder. But the part of me that had seen him donate millions to children's literacy programs, that had watched him personally visit the family of an employee who died of cancer, that had witnessed him refuse to do business with companies that used child labor, that part understood. Dante Moretti was a man trying to be good in a world that never taught him how. I'm not walking away, I said firmly. You should. I know, but I'm not. I squeezed his hand. Now let's figure out how to prove Castellano's lying before your meeting tonight. Something like hope flickered across his face. You're really staying? I'm really staying. He lifted my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles, gentle and reverent, and completely at odds with everything he'd just confessed. Then let's go to war. We spent the next 6 hours turning Dante's penthouse into a war room. I called in every favor I had, contacted every person in my network who might have information. Dante reached out to his most trusted people, the ones who'd been loyal to him, not his father. By 4 p.m., we had a plan. Vincent, the lawyer who'd stolen the files, had fled to Toronto, but his ex-wife, angry about the divorce and eager to sing her pa, was willing to testify that Castellano had paid Vincent $500,000 to sabotage Dante.
We had phone records showing multiple calls between Castellano and Vincent in the weeks leading up to the theft. We had testimony from two of Dante's legitimate business associates confirming that Castellano had tried to recruit them to plant false evidence. It wasn't perfect, but it might be enough. "The meeting's at 8, Dante said, reviewing our evidence. "At the Genovese restaurant in Little Italy. Neutral ground. What's the protocol? I present my defense. Castellano presents his evidence. The other families vote on who they believe." He looked up at me. "If they vote against me, I don't leave that restaurant alive." "We make sure they vote for you." "Isabel, you can't come to this meeting." "The hell I can't? It's too dangerous. Dante." I moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to meet my eyes. "I'm not letting you walk into that room alone. Either I come with you, or I follow you there. Your choice." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "Has anyone ever told you you're impossibly stubborn?" "You, approximately 47 times in the last 2 years. Make it 48. You're impossibly stubborn, Isabel Chen. And if we survive tonight, I'm never letting you go."
We had 2 hours before the meeting, 2 hours that might be our last together. Dante insisted I eat something, ordered takeout from the Italian place 3 blocks away, the one that made the carbonara I'd once mentioned liking in passing 6 months ago. Of course, he remembered. He remembered everything about me, just like I remembered everything about him. We sat at his kitchen island, the city lights spreading out through floor-to-ceiling windows. And for the first time in 2 years, we weren't boss and assistant, we were just us. "Tell me something true," Dante said quietly, pushing his barely touched food around his plate. "What do you mean?" "Something you've never told anyone. Something real." I thought about deflecting, keeping things light, but if tonight went wrong, if Castellano won, I wanted him to know at least one true thing about me. "When I was 8, I said slowly, my father left, just walked out one morning and never came back. My mother worked 3 jobs trying to keep us afloat, and I learned very young that the way to survive was to be useful, indispensable. If I could anticipate what people needed before they asked, maybe they'd keep me around." Dante's hand found mine on the counter. "That's why you're so good at your job," he said. "You've been practicing your whole life." "It's why I'm so good at being invisible," I corrected. "At being the person in the background who keeps everything running smoothly while never demanding to be seen." "I see you." The words were simple, but the weight behind them made my throat tight. "Since when?" "Since the beginning." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "I saw you the first day you walked into my office for your interview. You wore a gray suit that was slightly too big, and you sat in that chair," he nodded toward his office, "and looked at me like you didn't scare me at all. You did scare me. You didn't show it. You just pulled out a tablet and said, 'Before we start, I should tell you I've already identified 3 inefficiencies in your scheduling system and drafted solutions.'" He smiled at the memory. "Most people come to interviews trying to prove they're qualified. You came proving you were already better at my job than I was." "Arrogance or competence?" "Both. It's why I hired you on the spot." His expression softened. "It's also why I kept you at arm's length for 2 years, because the moment I hired you, I knew you were dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "You made me want things I couldn't have. Made me imagine a version of my life where I wasn't just my father's son, where I could be someone worthy of—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "Worthy of what?" "Of you." The confession landed between us, raw and honest and terrifying. "You are worthy," I said fiercely. "Dante, you're not your father."
You've spent 15 years trying to be better than him, to build something legitimate, to use your power for... He cut it off. I've killed people, Isabel. I've hurt people. I've done things that would make you look at me differently if you knew the details. Then tell me the details. All of them. Let me decide. So he did. He told me about the man he'd killed at 17, his first, because his father had forced him to prove his loyalty. About the nightmares that followed, the way he'd thrown up afterward, the therapist his mother had secretly sent him to until his father found out and had the therapist relocated. He told me about taking over the family at 21 and discovering the full extent of his father's crimes, the trafficking, the drugs, the protection rackets that preyed on small business owners who couldn't afford to pay. He told me about the 5-year plan he'd implemented to slowly transition the Moretti operations into legitimate business, how he'd shut down the trafficking first, lost 3 key allies in the process, survived 2 assassination attempts because of it, how he'd redirected the family's resources into real estate, shipping, logistics, businesses that could be cleaned up, audited, made legal, how every dollar of dirty money got laundered into charitable donations, scholarships, community programs. "I'll never be clean," he said quietly. "I've done too much, hurt too many people, but I'm trying to build something better, something my father never could have imagined." Why? Why work so hard to change? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because when I was 14, I watched my father execute a man in our living room. The man was begging for his life, saying he had a daughter. Please don't make his daughter grow up without a father. His hand tightened on mine. My father shot him anyway. And I realized that could be someone's father, someone's husband, someone who mattered to people who weren't criminals, who'd just gotten caught up in my father's world by accident. So you decided to be different. I decided to try. It's not the same thing. But meeting you, working with you, it made me want to try harder, because you looked at me like I could be more than what I was born into. You are more than that. Am I? Or am I just a monster with better PR? "You're a man," I said firmly, standing and moving around the island to face him. "A complicated, flawed, occasionally impossible man who's trying to be better than his past. That's all any of us can do." You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's true. I reached up, cupping his face in my hands. "You are not your father, Dante. You're not even the man you were 5 years ago. You're evolving, growing, changing. That's what matters." He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. "What did I do to deserve you? You hired me, paid me well, and occasionally let me win arguments." His laugh was quiet but genuine. When he opened his eyes, they were softer than I'd ever seen them. "If we survive tonight," he said, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. And if we don't survive, then at least I got to tell you the truth, that I love you, that I've loved you since the moment you marched into my office and reorganized my entire life, that every perfect moment, every time you anticipated my needs, every smile you gave someone else while never smiling at me, it was torture. I smiled at you. Professionally, politely. Never the way you smiled at that friend of yours at the gala." His hands came up to cover my hands. "I wanted that smile. Wanted you to look at me like I was someone you chose, not just someone who paid your salary." "You're an idiot," I said softly. "I've been in love with you for 2 years. Every late night, every impossible deadline, every moment you barely acknowledged I existed. I stayed because I couldn't imagine being anywhere else." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you were my boss. Because the power dynamic was impossible. Because I convinced myself that being indispensable was enough." I smiled sadly. "Because I was a coward." "You're the bravest person I know." "Then I'm a well-disguised coward. He pulled me closer until we were standing between his legs, his hands on my waist, my hands still cradling his face. Isabel Chen, he said seriously, if we survive tonight, will you go on a real date with me? Dinner, conversation, no emergency contracts or hostile takeovers. Just us. Are you asking me out, Mr. Moretti? I'm begging you, Miss Chen. I kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of 2 years of longing finally allowed to surface. He responded immediately, his hands tightening on my waist, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened into something that felt like a promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. We should go, he murmured. The meeting? I know. But neither of us moved. We stood there in his penthouse kitchen, holding each other, storing up this moment against whatever came next. Promise me something, I whispered. Anything. Promise that no matter what happens tonight, you'll fight. You'll fight to survive, to come back to me, to build the life you've been working towards. I promise. He kissed me again, fierce and desperate. And you promise me that if things go wrong, you'll run. You'll take the money and disappear and never look back. I can't promise that. Isabel, I can promise I'll fight just as hard as you, that I won't let Castellano win, that we'll walk out of that restaurant together or not at all. He looked at me like I was something precious and terrifying and completely unexpected. How did I get so lucky? You didn't. You were just less unlucky than usual. I smiled. Now let's prove you're not an FBI informant and survive long enough for that date. Practical as always. Someone has to be. He stood, pulling me with him, and for just a moment we were just Dante and Isabel. Not boss and assistant, not criminal and accomplice, just two people who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances. Then he straightened his tie, I grabbed my coat, and we walked out into the Chicago night to face 5 crime families and the man who wanted Dante dead.
The Genovese restaurant was exactly what I expected. Old-world Italian elegance with enough armed men stationed around the perimeter to stage a small war. Dante's hand found mine as we approached the entrance, squeezed once, then let go. We had to appear professional, united, but not romantically involved. Any sign of attachment could be used as weakness. Inside, the private dining room had been cleared, except for a single long table. 5 men sat on one side, the heads of Chicago's crime families, each one representing decades of power, violence, and carefully maintained territories. On the other side sat Roberto Castellano, looking smug and confident in an expensive suit. He had 3 lawyers with him and a stack of files that I knew contained fabricated evidence. Dante, Lorenzo Genovese said from his position at the head of the table. He was the oldest, the most respected, the unofficial mediator of disputes. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Dante's voice was carefully neutral. We all have choices. Lorenzo gestured to the empty chairs across from Castellano. Sit. Let's discuss the accusations Mr. Castellano has brought to our attention. Dante sat. I remained standing behind him, assistant, not participant, but every man in that room knew I was more than that. Castellano's gaze found mine, something calculating flickering across his expression. You brought your secretary? Executive assistant, I corrected coolly, and document verification specialist. I'll be corroborating the authenticity of any evidence presented tonight. How convenient, Castellano smiled. The accused brings his own verification. Would you prefer I bring no defense at all? Dante's voice was ice cold. We can end this quickly if you'd like. Just admit this is personal revenge for an insult 15 years old, and we'll skip the theater. Castellano's smile sharpened. This is about betrayal.
about you working with the FBI to bring down everyone at this table." "That's a serious accusation," Lorenzo interjected. "Do you have proof?" "I have documents showing Dante's cooperation with federal investigations dating back 3 years. Phone records, meeting logs, financial transactions that correlate with FBI raid timing." He pushed forward a thick folder. "Everything you need to see that Dante Moretti has been playing us all." The other family heads leaned forward, examining the documents with identical expressions of cold calculation. I moved closer, looking over their shoulders, and my stomach dropped. The documents looked real. Phone records showing calls to FBI agent Michael Torres, meeting logs that coincided with major federal operations, financial transactions that could easily be interpreted as payoffs for information. Someone put serious time and money into making this look authentic. "These are falsified," I said firmly. "Of course you'd say that. You're sleeping with him." The room went silent. Dante's hand curled into a fist on the table, but his voice stayed level. "My personal life is not relevant. It's absolutely relevant when your personal life compromises your judgment." Castellano leaned forward. "How long has she been in your bed, Dante? Since she started working for you? Before? Is she the one feeding information to the feds, or is she just blind to your betrayal because she's in love with you?" I felt every eye in the room turn to me. "I'm not," I started, but Dante cut me off. "Enough." He stood, his presence commanding instant attention. "You want to accuse me of working with the FBI. Fine, present your evidence. Let it be examined by neutral parties, but leave Miss Chen out of this." "She's hardly neutral," she shot back. "She's been compromised by her relationship with you. For all we know, she helped fabricate whatever counter-evidence you're planning to present." "The only fabrication here is yours," I said sharply, stepping forward despite Dante's warning glance. "And I can prove it." "Can you?" Castellano's smile was reptilian. "Then please enlighten us." I pulled out my tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "These phone records," I projected them on the wall screen, "show calls to FBI agent Michael Torres on December 3rd, 8th, and 14th of last year. Except Agent Torres was in federal custody himself during that time period for corruption charges. He couldn't have received calls." One of the family heads sat forward, interested now. "The meeting logs," I continued, pulling up more documents, "reference Dante's presence at the FBI field office on 6 occasions. But I have his actual calendar," I projected it, "showing he was in Los Angeles, Miami, and once in Tokyo during those dates, with witnesses, receipts, and security footage." "Those could be fabricated," Castellano said, but his confidence was wavering. "Could be. Except I also have testimony from Vincent Rossi, the lawyer who stole these files, admitting that you paid him $500,000 to steal Moretti files and create false evidence. I pulled up the video recording. Would you like to watch it? Or should I just play the part where he details exactly how you instructed him to falsify the phone records?" Castellano's face went white. "You're lying," he said flatly. "Vincent would never—" Vincent's ex-wife was very angry about his sudden departure to Toronto with his mistress. Angry enough to provide us with bank statements showing your payment, phone records showing your conversations, and a delightful recording of you explaining exactly how to frame Dante for federal cooperation. I played 30 seconds of audio, Castellano's voice, unmistakable, giving instructions on which documents to steal and how to alter them. The room erupted. Family heads were shouting. Castellano was on his feet, face red with fury. His lawyers looked like they wanted to disappear. And then Castellano made a mistake. He went for his gun. Time slowed. I saw his hand move to his jacket, saw Dante shift, reaching for his own weapon, saw the bodyguards stationed around the room respond. But before anyone could fire, Lorenzo Genovese's voice cracked like a whip. "Nobody shoots in my restaurant!" Everyone froze. Lorenzo stood slowly, his aged face carved from granite. Mr. Castellano, you have attempted to frame a fellow member of our community with false evidence. You have violated our most sacred rule, honesty among ourselves, whatever lies we tell the outside world. He deserves what he deserves is not your decision. You bring accusations, they are proven false, and now you reach for violence in a place of mediation? He looked at the other family heads. What is our verdict? One by one, they stood. Castellano is finished in Chicago, one said. His territories are forfeit, another added. His family name is dishonored, a third concluded. Lorenzo looked at Dante. His fate is yours to decide, Dante Moretti. You have been wronged. Justice is yours. The room went silent. Dante stood slowly, every eye on him. This was the moment that would define him. Would he choose violence, revenge, the old way of blood answering blood? Or would he choose something different? He walked around the table until he stood directly in front of Castellano, who met his gaze with a mixture of fear and defiance. 15 years ago, Dante said quietly, I insulted your family by refusing to marry your sister. I was young, arrogant, and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. For that, I apologize. Castellano blinked, clearly not expecting that. But what you've done tonight, attempting to frame me, to destroy me with lies, that's not justice for an old insult. That's ambition dressed up as honor. Dante's voice hardened. So here's my verdict. You're out. Out of Chicago, out of the business, out of the life. Take whatever money you have and disappear. Start over somewhere else. And if I ever see you again, if you ever threaten anyone I care about again, his gaze flickered to me, I won't be merciful. You're letting him live? One of the family heads asked, surprised. I'm choosing to be better than my father, Dante said simply. Better than the violence that built this world. If that makes me weak in your eyes, so be it. Lorenzo smiled, genuine and approving. That makes you strong, Dante. Stronger than any of us gave you credit for. Castellano was escorted out by stone-faced bodyguards. The other families began to disperse, each one stopping to shake Dante's hand, to acknowledge his restraint, his choice. When the room finally cleared, it was just Dante, Lorenzo, and me. Your father would have killed him, Lorenzo said quietly, without hesitation. I know. But you didn't, because of her, he nodded towards me. Dante's gaze found mine, warm and unguarded. Because I want to be someone worthy of her. That means choosing differently than my father would have. Lorenzo chuckled. Hold on to this one, Dante. Women who make us want to be better men are rare. He moved towards the exit, then paused. And Miss Chen, thank you for saving his stubborn life tonight. He'd be lost without you. I know, I said, smiling. When we were finally alone, Dante crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. We did it, he breathed against my hair. You did it. We raced back to Dante's penthouse in tense silence. My mind was spiraling through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Someone had my information, my real identity, my mother's address back in Seattle, my entire carefully constructed life laid bare. We'll figure this out, Dante said, though his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I'll protect you. You can't protect me from someone who already has everything they need. Then I'll find them, hunt them down, make them... Dante, I put my hand over his. Stop. Just stop. He pulled up to his building and we rode the elevator in silence. The penthouse door had been expertly jimmied. No obvious damage, just the work of professionals who knew what they were doing. Inside was chaos. Not destruction, but careful, methodical searching. Every drawer opened, every file examined. The safe in his office stood open and empty. Dante's head of security, Marcus, was waiting inside with two other men I recognized from Dante's inner circle. Tell me everything, Dante demanded. They came in through the building's maintenance access around 7 p.m., Marcus reported. 3 people, professionals. They disabled the security cameras, bypassed the alarm system, and went straight for the safe. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Who's they? Don't know yet, but they left this. Marcus held out a single business card. I took it, my hands shaking. The card was cream-colored, expensive paper with elegant script that read, "Some debts are paid in blood, others in family. You'll understand soon. V." V? What does that mean? Dante's face had gone absolutely white. Vittori. The family Castellano's sister married into? Not just any family. Lorenzo Vittori. He's the head of the East Coast operations, one of the most powerful men in our world, and he stopped, jaw clenched. And what? He was my father's best friend before everything went wrong, before my father betrayed him, stole territory, destroyed his Chicago operations. Dante looked up at me, devastation in his eyes. This isn't about you, Isabel. This is about me, about my father's sins coming back to haunt me. What did your father do? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, 20 years ago, Lorenzo and my father were partners. They built the Chicago operations together, split everything 50-50. But my father got greedy. He orchestrated a situation that made it look like Lorenzo had betrayed the other families. Lorenzo had to flee to the East Coast or be killed. He lost everything, his reputation, his territory, his family's name. And your father took it all. Yes. And when I took over, I inherited his empire, his enemies, his debts. Dante ran a hand through his hair. Lorenzo's been waiting 20 years for revenge. He's not after Castellano's small-time grudge. He's after everything. And now, his voice broke slightly, now he knows about you. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. He's going to use me against you, I said quietly. That's why he stole my information. He's going to hurt me to hurt you. No. Dante stood abruptly. No, I won't let that happen. You're leaving, tonight. Marcus will take you to the private airfield. I have a place in New Zealand, off-grid, completely secure. You'll go there and... No. Isabel, I'm not running. I moved to stand in front of him. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I fell in love with you. The words burst out loud and fierce. You think I'm just going to disappear while Lorenzo Vittori tries to destroy you? You think I'm going to let you sacrifice yourself to protect me? I'd sacrifice anything to keep you safe. And I'd sacrifice anything to keep you safe. So we're at an impasse. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. We face this together, Dante. We find Lorenzo, we negotiate, we figure out what he really wants, but I'm not running. He'll kill you to hurt me. Maybe. Or maybe there's another way. An idea was forming, crazy and dangerous, but possibly our only shot. Your father betrayed Lorenzo 20 years ago. What if we offer him something Lorenzo wants more than revenge? There's nothing. What if we offer him the truth? I was thinking fast now, my organizational brain kicking into gear. Your father's dead. You've spent 15 years trying to undo his damage. What if we bring Lorenzo here, give him everything, all the evidence of what your father did, public acknowledgement of the betrayal, compensation for what he lost? That would destroy my father's reputation. Your father's dead, Dante. His reputation doesn't matter. What matters is the empire you've built, the legitimate business you've created, and, I squeezed his hands, us, our future. He stared at me like I'd just proposed something impossible. You'd help me destroy my own father's legacy? I'd help you build your own legacy, one that's honest, clean, worthy of the man you're trying to be. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he pulled me close, pressing his forehead to mine. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. There's one problem, Marcus interjected quietly. Lorenzo's not in Chicago. He's in New York, And he's not likely to come here just because Dante asks nicely. I pulled up my phone, an idea crystallizing. What if I ask him? What? He stole my information because he knows I matter to you, which means he's expecting you to come to him, to trade yourself for my safety. I met Dante's eyes. What if I go to him first, alone, offered to negotiate on your behalf? Absolutely not. Dante's voice was pure steel. I'm not sending you into the lion's den. You're not sending me. I'm going. I pulled up Lorenzo's company website, legitimate import and export business, front for his real operations. He thinks I'm just your assistant, some woman he's compromised with his world. But I'm more than that. I'm smart. I'm resourceful. And I'm the only leverage you have over you. Which is exactly why it's too dangerous. Or it's exactly why it might work. I looked at Marcus. Can you get me on a plane in New York tonight? Isabel, can you? Marcus looked at Dante, who looked like he was being torn apart. Don't do this, Dante said quietly. Please, I can't lose you. You won't lose me. I'm going to negotiate with Lorenzo, find out what he really wants, and come back. I cupped his face. Trust me, the same way I trusted you tonight at that meeting. That was different. How? Because I'm used to danger. You're not. I've been working for you for 2 years, Dante. I've been in danger this whole time. I just didn't realize it. I kissed him softly. Let me do this. Let me be your partner in this, not just the person you protect. He closed his eyes, agony written across his features. When he opened them, they were filled with resignation and terror in equal measure. If you do this, if you go to New York, you take Marcus with you, and you wear a wire, and you promise me that if anything goes wrong, you run. I promise. Liar. Probably. I smiled despite the fear coursing through me. But I love you, and I'm not letting Lorenzo Vittori destroy what we're building. He pulled me into a kiss that felt like goodbye and forever all at once. When we broke apart, he pressed something into my hand, a small panic button, disguised as an expensive-looking pendant. You press this, and I come for you. No matter where you are, no matter what's happening. You press it, and I burn down the entire East Coast to get to you. Dramatic. Honest. I put the pendant on, feeling its weight settle against my chest like a promise. I'll be back by tomorrow night. You better be. We have a date, remember? Dinner and conversation? And no emergency contracts. His smile was strained. Though at this rate, we might need to negotiate a peace treaty instead. My specialty. Marcus cleared his throat. Plane leaves in 2 hours. We should go. I turned to leave, but Dante caught my hand. Isabel? Yeah? Come back to me. Always. I walked out of his penthouse, Marcus at my side, and tried not to think about the fact that I might be walking to my death. But if there was a chance, even a small one, to save Dante from his father's sins, to build a future together that wasn't haunted by the past, I had to try, even if it killed me.
Lorenzo Vittori's estate was in the Hamptons, all old money and careful discretion. I arrived at 10 a.m. the next morning, exhausted from a sleepless night on the plane, but determined. Marcus had wanted to come inside with me. I'd refused. This had to be me alone, or Lorenzo would see it as Dante sending protection, sending control. The guard at the gate had been expecting me. Ms. Chen, Mr. Vittori is in the garden. I followed a stone path through immaculate grounds until I found him. An older man, maybe 70, with silver hair and the kind of face that had been handsome once and was now simply commanding. He was trimming roses with steady, practiced hands. Miss Chen, he said without looking up, I wondered if you'd come. You didn't leave me much choice. No, I didn't. He set down his shears and finally looked at me. Do you know why I took your information? To hurt Dante through me. No. His smile was sad. To see if Dante Moretti had become his father. If you showed up here, it would mean he sent you to negotiate, used you as a pawn. That would tell me everything I needed to know about the kind of man he is. I processed this. And if I didn't come, then I'd know he'd hidden you somewhere safe and was coming himself, which would also tell me everything I needed to know. Lorenzo gestured to a bench. Sit. Tell me why you're here. I sat, my heart pounding. Because Dante didn't send me. I came on my own because I love him, and I won't let you destroy him for his father's sins. His father destroyed me first. I know. Dante told me everything. How his father betrayed you, stole your territory, ruined your reputation. I leaned forward, but Dante isn't his father. He spent 15 years trying to undo the damage, to build something legitimate, to be better. And you believe him? I know him. I've worked beside him for 2 years. I've seen every contract, every deal, every decision. He's not perfect. He's done things he regrets, but he's trying. That has to count for something. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then, Dante's father and I were like brothers. We built an empire together, and he betrayed me without hesitation because he wanted more power. His hands clenched. Do you know what it's like to lose everything because someone you trusted chose ambition over loyalty? Yes, I said quietly. My father left when I was 8, just walked away. I learned very young that people will betray you if it serves their interests. Then you understand why I want revenge. I understand why you wanted revenge. Past tense. I met his eyes, but taking it now, 20 years later, against Dante instead of his father, that's not justice. That's just more pain. What would you have me do? Forgive? Forget? I'd have you meet with Dante. Let him acknowledge his father's betrayal publicly. Let him compensate you for what you lost. Let him help restore your reputation. I pulled out the documents I'd prepared on the plane. Dante is willing to give you everything: financial compensation, public acknowledgement, even territory if that's what it takes. He just wants this to end. Lorenzo took the documents, reading through them with careful attention. He'd give up this much? He'd give up everything to keep the people he loves safe, including you, especially me. Lorenzo set the documents aside. You love him very much. I do. Even knowing what he is, what his world entails, I know exactly what his world entails. I've lived in it for 2 years, and yes, I love him anyway, because he's trying to be better, because he's choosing differently than his father did, because, my voice caught slightly, because everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even the sons of monsters. Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. You're quite remarkable, Miss Chen. I'm practical. There's a difference. He laughed, genuine and surprised. I see why he loves you. He stood, pacing through the garden. I've spent 20 years planning revenge. 20 years building towards this moment. And now you're here, asking me to let it go. I'm asking you to choose something different. Not forgiveness. You don't have to forgive Dante's father, but mercy for a man who's trying to be better than what he was born into. Lorenzo stopped, looking at me with something like respect. If I agree to meet with Dante, if I accept his offer, what guarantee do I have that he won't betray me like his father did? Me. You? I'll be the intermediary, the neutral party. If Dante fails to uphold any agreement you make, I'll personally ensure you get justice. I stood, facing him directly. That's my guarantee, my word, my reputation. You'd risk that for him? Without hesitation. For a long moment, Lorenzo simply studied me. Then he smiled, real and warm and approving. Dante's father never had someone like you, someone who made him want to be better. That was always his weakness. He only surrounded himself with people who enabled his worst instincts. He extended his hand. I'll meet with Dante. We'll negotiate, but not because I forgive his father, but because I respect what you're trying to build together. I shook his hand, relief flooding through me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Dante and I have much to discuss, but he paused, something like kindness in his eyes. I won't hurt you, and I won't destroy what he's built. You have my word on that. That's all I ask. I called Dante from the car, my hands shaking with adrenaline and relief. Isabel? His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. Are you okay? Did he... I'm fine. And he's agreed to meet with you, to negotiate. Silence. Then, you did it. We did it, together. When are you coming home? I'm at the airport now. I'll be there in 4 hours. I'll be waiting. A pause. Isabel? Yeah? I love you. In case I haven't said it enough, in case you didn't know, I love you. I know, and I love you too. Now, go prepare for your meeting with Lorenzo. Make a count. I will. And, Isabel, yeah? When you get back, we're having that date. No emergencies, no negotiations, no crime families. Just us. Promise? Promise. The restaurant Dante chose was small and intimate. The kind of place that didn't advertise. Didn't need to. Just excellent food and quiet corners where people could talk without being overheard. We sat across from each other. No contracts between us. No emergencies looming. Just dinner and wine and conversation. Tell me something, Dante said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Something I don't know. You know everything about me. I know your work, your competence, your devastating capacity for sarcasm. He smiled. But tell me something personal, something real. I thought about it. When I was 12, I wanted to be a pastry chef. I'd watch cooking shows and practice making elaborate cakes in our tiny kitchen. What happened? Reality. Pastry shows don't make enough money to support families or pay off student loans. I squeezed his hand. So I became practical instead. Efficient. Indispensable. Do you regret it? Not anymore. I met his eyes. Because being practical led me to you. And you, I smiled, you make me want to be impractical sometimes. Good. He stood, pulling me up with him. Then be impractical with me. Dance. There's no music. So? He pulled me close, and we swayed together in the quiet restaurant, the staff politely pretending not to notice. I met with Lorenzo again yesterday. We finalized the agreement. Public acknowledgement of my father's betrayal, financial compensation, and a partnership on the East Coast shipping operations. How do you feel? Free. For the first time in my life, I feel free of my father's shadow, free to build something new, something honest. Because of Lorenzo's forgiveness? Because of you. Because you showed me that choosing differently was possible, that I didn't have to be what I was born into. I reached up, tracing the line of his jaw. You're giving me too much credit. Impossible. I could never give you enough credit for what you've done, for who you are. He kissed me softly. I love you, Isabel Chen. In every way a person can be saved. You saved yourself.
I just had helped with the paperwork. His laugh was warm and genuine, always so practical. Someone has to be. True. But tonight, he pulled a small box from his pocket, and my breath caught. Tonight, I'm going to be impractical. He opened the box, revealing a simple ring. Platinum band, single diamond. Elegant and understated. Perfect. Isabel Chen, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in every sense of the word? Will you help me build something worth having and keep me honest when I forget who I want to be? I stared at the ring, at his hopeful expression, at the future stretching out before us, complicated and uncertain and absolutely perfect. Yes, I whispered. To all of it. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Dante Moretti never did anything halfway. I love you, he said, pulling me close. I know. You've told me approximately 8,000 times since you finally admitted it. And I'll tell you 8,000 more. I'm counting on it. We kissed there in the quiet restaurant, and I felt everything click into place. The chaos of the last few months, the danger and fear and impossible choices, all of it had led here, to this moment, this man, this future. So, I said when we finally broke apart, about that honeymoon. I'm thinking somewhere without crime families or hostile takeovers. Ambitious. I'm told it's one of my best qualities. Among many. He kissed me again, soft and sweet. Where were you thinking? Surprise me. You hate surprises. I used to, but then a man tracked my phone and showed up at every restaurant where I had fake dates, and I learned that some surprises, I smiled, some surprises are worth it. Even the stalker adjacent ones, especially those. We left the restaurant hand in hand, walking into a Chicago night that felt full of possibilities instead of dangers. Behind us were the ghosts of fathers and betrayals and violence. Ahead of us was something we'd built together. Honest, imperfect, and entirely ours. Hey, Dante, I said as we walked. Yeah? I'm glad I came to that gala. I'm glad Marco agreed to be my fake date. I'm glad you lost your mind with jealousy. You're glad you stalked me? I prefer passionately interested despite poor emotional management skills. His laugh echoed down the street. Much better phrasing. I have excellent organizational skills, remember? Including reorganizing inconvenient truths into palatable narratives. What would I do without you? Hire someone less competent and complain about it constantly. True. But I'd rather keep you forever instead. Good plan. I'm told planning is one of my strengths. Among many. We walked through Chicago, past the buildings that held our history, the office where we'd spent 2 years orbiting each other, the restaurant where he'd first shown jealousy, the streets we'd driven through racing against time and enemies. All of it had brought us here, to this moment, this love, this future. And as Dante pulled me into another kiss under the streetlights, I realized something fundamental. Sometimes the best love stories start with jealousy and chaos and completely impractical emotions. Sometimes you have to lose control completely before you find exactly what you've been looking for. And sometimes, just sometimes, the answer to the question you didn't know you were asking comes in the form of an impossible man who tracks your phone, buys buildings, and finally learns to say, I love you, out loud. Even if it takes jealousy, fake boyfriends, and crime family negotiations to get there.